kind of start with like a nice intro. And I guess like two token system is maybe a bit misleading, but a reputation based token system might be better. So I don't know, but that's maybe something we can define or talk about. So I guess the problem statement, I'll try if I can bring this up, is that in a DAO or in a community, you'll have reputation, and that reputation you ideally want people to earn, but not be able to sell it and transfer it to someone else, right? So kind of like if I have a degree, a uni degree, you don't want that to be sold ideally, but somebody has to work for it. But then I guess the problem is that then is not really a reward to work for. So you get that token, you have status, and maybe that gives you some things, but the idea of a token is also to have something like liquidity, so you can earn it and you can sell it on a market and maybe cash out and have a share of a business, right? So that's kind of that problem I guess we came upon. And yeah, we've found some interesting avenues and basically like, yeah, other articles, other people thinking about the same thing. Most recently, Optimism launched something very similar to the idea that we've had and are discussing, right? So yeah, is that like a good summary of the problem?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a pretty universal problem, right? So I was thinking about it this morning in the context of like even bigger outside of DAOs, right? Like the governance of countries, like local politics or whatever. Like you're always faced with the issue of somebody's, in that case, somebody's running as a candidate to be elected. How does that person prove their reputation? And how do I, as a voter, get any kind of transparency into who they are and what they stand for? And rather than just listening to what they say, like I would love to be able to kind of check their actions, right? Because that's
Their on-chain
usually
credentials.
Yeah. Well, so that might be right. So that might be the solution. At the moment, mostly it's like resumes, like, CVs and like letters of recommendation. It's like super sketch, right? Because nobody really checks up on anything you put on a CV, very rarely. And like, I can easily take the same job experience that I've had, like I've done this obviously, and like tailor my experience to fit the job I'm applying for example, right? So if you're running for political office, obviously you're going to make it sound like you've done all this service, right? You're very generous and like a servant leader, blah, blah, blah. Go kiss some babies and like shake some hands and stuff. But like, does it really reflect your actions in the past? And so like having something like a verifiable public ledger kind of to check up on, like, oh yeah, this person really did spend a bunch of time doing this, or they worked on that that would solve, I think it would solve a huge problem for like public trust. And then of course, like on the micro level, like within a DAO or within an organization, or like what I said already, like with the CV, like applying for a job, it seems like it would work across many dimensions, right, to have this verifiable reputation system.
And it would give use to it, right? I mean, it's probably wrong. I said in the beginning that it, like, the status doesn't really have a lot of use, but that certainly is use, right? So if you could use it to apply at a different DAO and show that you've done work with another DAO, you can use that, right? And you get some kind of NFT or status tokens, and you can show that you have that amount of status tokens, and they can't be bought and they can't be transferred. So it means you have to have gotten them through some work. So if the issuer of the token is then trustworthy, then yeah, I guess that can count as something like a CV.
Right. Yeah. So then I guess what you said, like the issuer has to also be trustworthy, right? So that's then an interesting layer on top of that. So I guess we also need like a meta reputation system for the issuer somehow. So how would that work?
Yeah, well, I mean, that now goes into something that's called self-sovereign identity. It's yeah, it's kind of a system that uses blockchain, don't necessarily has to, but how self-sovereign identity works, you have someone who signs a credential, that could be a university, signs a credential that you've done a degree at their university, so they're signing it. And they're signing it with their private key, similar to you doing a transaction on the blockchain, right? If I send you some ETH, I sign it with my private key that only I know, but you know my public key. And so you can know that it was signed by me. And that's kind of how that would work. And what SSI, or in self-sovereign identity, when it uses blockchain, what they do, they publish a record onto the blockchain with your with the name of the institution and the public key. So everybody can see on the blockchain, and that's the part that's immutable, then everybody can see that this is the university XYZ, and that's their public key. So if they signed something, a certificate, then we know at least that it's from this university that has signed it. And if you trust that they keep good care of their key, then that's a pretty good way to do that, right? And reputation, right. Yeah, I guess comes with a name, and I'm not sure how that would change, but
well, yeah, it would be cool, right? Because you could then run a query and kind of see all the certificates issued by this address. Like, say it is a big university, right? They will be issuing tons of these all the time.
Yeah.
And then you could actually go and track, like, well, what have the people that have received these, what did they go and do? So it would become like a super interesting like network graph that you could like watch, you know.
Yeah, you can look it up, right? Yeah. And essentially the part that verifies that information is the person that needs to trust, right? So the employer or the landlord, if you're applying for an apartment or something like that, right? They need to trust the issuer. And if that's the case, then yeah, it's good. So they can then just check if the thing was signed by them and really only signed by them. And then that's a way you can verify it. So that's, yeah, I guess like that's a really cool topic to explore and go down into and figure out. I think like the Kilt protocol that I've wrote about does something like that. And yeah, SSI in general is a super interesting topic. But you could also do this with like NFTs, and the model would be similar, right? It would be a similar way. You can issue an NFT, and if the NFT is issued by some authority or someone with reputation, like let's say a big DAO, then yeah, everybody else can verify that it was really signed by them, and you can use that as reputation then, right?
Right. And then so, but I guess to take it back to the inner workings of the DAO, or like Optimism protocol, so they have created this two-house system, right? Or that's what they call it anyway. So what is it? Token house and citizens house or something?
Yep.
Yep.
And the idea here is, I mean, it's very similar, right? Except it's kind of narrowed down to the governance of the protocol. So this could work within a DAO, or just like, yeah, like governance of protocol, any kind of project, I guess. And the split here is, like you said in the beginning, Flo, that you want to have the token to be able to give a monetary reward to people, or let them speculate, or, you know, whatever it might be, whatever you do with tokens. And then, but decouple that from the governance of the protocol. And then, so I guess, so how do you earn the citizen tokens, I guess? So it's proof of work, right? Or is it like, I guess it's to be defined by the issuer, or how would that work?
Yeah, they could do it for anything. I mean, like if we think of a university, you have to do all these tests, and at the end you have to write a thesis, or let's say your driver's license,
and pay all this money though.
Yeah, and pay all the money. Or like for a driver's license, you have to do a driver's license test, right? driving test,
Yeah.
or whatever that's called. And if you want to become a financial advisor, you need to do a test for that. Or if you want to, an accountant, everything. And then the government often, or bodies of the government, issue things like that, where, you get a token for
I guess
doing something and getting tested on something.
the quality of that credential is also it also depends on the balance of how that credential is allowed to be earned, right? If there was a university that was just giving stuff out because you pay a lot of money, but the tests were really simple, then it wouldn't be that good of a credential, because everyone would know, oh, all you needed was money to get it. But then take it to the other extreme. If there's a university that was so difficult to get in, and so almost impossible to pass, and you take 10 years to pass and get a bachelor's degree, no one would want to do it. So at the end, that's not a good system either, because it's just too onerous. So there's also that aspect of balancing the difficulty of it to show that work was done, but at the same time, it's not about making it the toughest thing out there. It's not you need a barrier of entry, but it's not really a competition to say that barrier has to be the highest.
Yeah. And maybe you can even this can even be something like incremental, so you can climb ranks, right? So maybe the university system isn't actually that good because it only has these 2 levels, but then, and you do that for how long do you do for a university degree? I don't know, 6 years or so. And then you've got that degree, but the rest of the 40 years that you work, there's nothing like that ranks it. That all comes from different employers. There was no real system on how to do that, but a system where you could, similar to a video game, where you could just level up and increase these levels over time and collect more points. And that could be tokens in this case, or NFTs. I think that would be a much cooler system to use, a lot better for everybody, for applying, for somebody, let's say you apply for a job or you want to hire someone, anything. If you just show these tokens, and the other side then basically trusts whoever has issued these tokens to you. And that could be a government body, that could be a university, that could be an employer, or a DAO. And they would say, hey, this guy has added a lot of value to what we've done, and he therefore has knowledge, and we've given him all of these tokens, right? Therefore, that's his level, kind of, and so he could use that to show that elsewhere, right? So I think we're getting there with all these different initiatives. I mean, the A16Z article is similar. They argue with that same idea, right? That you, kind of have this non-transferable reputation or status token that you can use for these kind of things.
I mean, if we think about, I just had to think about, let's say you mentioned driver's license, right? You do this test, and then you take these lessons, you prove that you've listened to what the instructors said, and you've proven that you've got some basic level of coordination, right? And then you get given this card to say you're now allowed on the road, right? So that's one level of credential, correct? But then that's very different from being Michael Schumacher, right? Because then that credential is a different credential. That one's anybody, let's say, anybody's allowed to be in a race car, let's say, but doesn't mean that you're going to win a race. And so maybe there's also that aspect of, there's proof of work, but then there's also NFTs where you can give out to really insane levels of work that was done, right? That showed not only time put in, but actually a good mixture of discipline and talent and project management and whatever, to come away with something that is really the year 2022, whatever champion, right? And that thing follows people around forever, right?
Was it? That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It's a really good point, Jake. So I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out online marketing, right? So you can spend endless amounts of time trying to boost the revenue of a project or trying to start something from zero, and it might not work, right? Like if just the effort you put in is not necessarily equal the outcome. So so it's a tricky balance probably, right? You want to reward, I would think you want to reward generously with these non-transferable tokens, like with coins or whatever we call them, for people to put in the effort, but then there also needs to be a layer of kind of proving result in a way, you know? It's like, he was head of marketing for 3 years. Unfortunately, the company is broke now. It's like, maybe he's not the best head of marketing, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And also it also gives that wild card effect as well, right? Like there might be somebody that doesn't have a degree, but might be a gun in, I don't know, in sales, right? And if he shows that he's done something before, he doesn't have a, he never went to an online marketing university, right? But he's got a Twitter account that has like 5 million followers, right? It's like, that's, you know, he's not credentialed, but the result is his credential.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the community kind of voted him into this place, right?
Yeah, because he was in a way in competition, you know, he is in competition with everyone else for attention, and he came away with this result.
Yeah, a lot of attention. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe that goes into the whole direction of like, how do you distribute such a reputation token, right? It could be and you could do this via like voting. You could have a community in a DAO, and they could vote every month on a fixed set of reputation or status tokens, and they could all collectively vote on who should get what part of the share of tokens. Let's say there's like 15 tokens distributed every month, and then everybody votes on which member gets what share of these 15 tokens. Not sure, right? But and then like when you use these tokens then outside of the DAO, you would have to go and explain the mechanism that was in place at the time they've issued them, right? That's basically what you have to do. But nobody does that, you know. I mean, like if when you've applied for a job and you've shown them your degree, have they looked at like how difficult the tests were? And you know, they just look at, okay, that's the university and I've heard of them, so it seems okay, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also in a way a bit unfair, right? Like let's say we all three of us went to the engineering school, let's say, and came away with an honors degree, but my test was super easy and the other guy had to, you know, study all day just to get qualifications to take the test, you know, and half his class fails. It's unfair as well to judge based on that, just that layer. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But
I mean,
anyway,
there's also a game to that, right? Doing well at school is a different game than doing well in professional life. So it's, but I don't know, but there's always going to be levels, I think, to that.
But I just wanted to say that just to illustrate that reputation and status, sometimes it's not linear. That's all I wanted to say, right? Like there is the bit that you get to open the door with, you know, you get your foot in the door, and then there's that bit that exponential bit that goes to the moon, you know. If I was to say, hey Lovis, you know, you've got a nest egg, you want to invest that with someone, and you say, yeah, please, I don't have time, I want to let somebody take care of my money. You're not just going to say, oh, anybody that has a CFA or whatever, you know, you're going to ask him, hey, how have you performed, right? You know that the CFA just means that he knows what a bond is and a stock is and right? It doesn't mean that he knows the right one to choose, you know?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
But how do you test that? You need some kind of track record that you look at, right? Most of the times.
Yeah. And in many aspects, in many ways, when we get to a more senior position in our work, right, in our careers, people start to ask you less about your degree, right? They're more like, if you've worked for 10 years, the degree would be like, oh, okay, I know this guy studied here, probably give me some insight into his culture, into his networks, right? Oh, that guy studied at a Chinese university, oh, he must have good contacts in China. right? That kind of thing. But if they're already 10, 15 years into a line of work, I'm going to be asking them, hey, what did you do? Tell me something cool that you made happen. And
Yeah.
it's so different, the kind of questions you ask as people move up that seniority rank.
Yeah. But this, what did you do? That could be in a way something you could reflect with the token, right? So a lot of communities already do that with POAPs, with proof of attendance. This proof of attendance protocol. And they basically issue an NFT if you've been to some meeting, or if you've completed some course, then you get this NFT and you have it and you can show it. So you can actually prove that you've done something or completed something or worked on a project. It could be like, you've worked on this critical software implementation project, and at the end, the project manager issues you this token saying like, you've been part of it, you've done a good job in that. You've been I don't know, you've been one of the architects or the developers on it.
Yeah.
And maybe we can do a POAP that's, sorry, Lois, go.
I think we have a small delay. That's why we always cut into each other. But I was just thinking with our consulting projects, we should issue those to clients as well, both like internally and externally, because it can also become a badge, right? Especially since our topic is tokenomics and we help with the design. So then we have a paid engagement. We also issue them some sort of NFT or POAP. And then if we do that consistently, and these projects do well over time, it will really also boost the reputation of the DAO, right?
But like only if they show it, right? And that's kind of the idea. Like where does the client show the POAP? Like I could see like a consultant where he would show it, or somebody that's worked for us or with us.
But we have to issue so the thing is, though, if we only issue it internally, then yes, so then the DAO says, okay, like Lovis worked on this project, so that's good. But if the DAO also issues it to the client and somehow they match, then maybe it also becomes even more reputable,
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the client doesn't have to show it. Maybe we just have to build a site where you can enter their address and like verify, like, yeah, they actually did work on that, But then I guess we could just spam everybody with our POAPs. Maybe that wouldn't work.
Or you could have the client sign it and send it, right? You could build like an app saying, hey, thanks for the project. To complete it, please sign this transaction here. We'll issue a POAP to every consultant that worked on the project.
There you go. I think that would be super cool.
Yeah. That's cool.
And I would love if that POAP, the A was not attendance, but was achievement. I think that would be really cool, So you could give that POAP out to people that you can say, hey, been part of $1 million USDC worth of projects in a year, right? Like that's like $1 million worth of projects in a year. Or something like that, that would be a pretty sick sort of achievement badge, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's even cooler. Like if you have a POAP, a proof of achievement protocol, and you would you would basically put one of these, like you could quantify it. You could say like, hey, he worked on he completed 4 successful client engagements, or he wrote 20 articles for Tokenomics DAO, and then we could publish that. Or he had like he had one article that had over 50,000 reads.
1 million Twitter impressions on a tweet. Right? Or something like that. Because those would be freaking cool. I think status badges to get, right? And and just now when we were talking about giving it to clients, maybe that would work if we got together with other DAOs, right? And then come together to come up with something that says, it's like a third party thing where the client would be able to say, been billed for like 1,000 hours at certified DAOs, So like they use it as a way to show that they're supporting DAOs as a means of getting work done. So they could say, hey, 60% of our whatever we're trying to build in our project was, built by DAOs, and these are members of the DAO. I mean, members of this, I don't even know what you want to call it, the guild of DAOs or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because then it's not just Tokenomics DAO, but any other DAO that's out there. If they get it, gives the incentive to a Web3 project to go, hey, I want DAOs to do it if I can, rather than getting it done by a traditional entity.
Yeah. I saw this tweet the other day. It said the real winner of the NFT craze was Fiverr. Because I guess a lot of people hired artists from Fiverr to design the NFTs. But I think I don't know if it's true or not. But
I think like this on-chain credential thing, or like achievement, I don't know how you want to call it. That's like a really big topic that's now emerging. And I think there will be like lots of different initiatives and projects, DAOs starting their own thing. And then I hope at some point there will be this consolidation where you bring it all into this like unified format. And that's going to be really cool. I mean, I don't know, just think about when you're like applying for an apartment, that's always the use case, this main use case that they bring with SSI. And you have to tell the landlord to give him like your last paychecks and your rental history, and then some contact at your employer, some previous rental agent, I don't know what, all this kind of stuff you have to send them. And yeah, they can look into all this information. You don't know where they store it. So it's like all a bit of a privacy issue, I guess. But it's also cumbersome for you to get all this information every single time you apply. So if you could just have that on chain issued by like my bank, let's say my bank or a DAO or someone else just issues me this thing, and then I can just go and use it every single time I do something.
Yeah. Well, so in that scenario, Flo, though, like a bigger deposit, like a financial security, would also solve a big chunk of the worry of the landlord, wouldn't it? Because like that was always the thing that I found curious in the US, like trying to rent an apartment. Yeah, you do have to fill out all this paperwork. But then the deposit was only like $200-300. And like in Germany, it's the other way. Like you pay like 2 or 3 months rent in deposit. So it's like thousands, right?
Yeah.
But it's a lot less paperwork. And so I don't know, like this.
Yeah.
So like not saying that you should
both.
be able to buy that reputation, but of course, like kind of like staking or like putting capital at risk does also work into the reputation to some degree, right?
Yeah. To where it kind of like proves. Yeah, because you have skin in the game, you kind of make sure that you're not lying or cheating on that thing. Yeah.
There's some sort of recourse, right? If you do lie, then at least there's
your money's on the line somewhere then in that. Yeah. So I guess like this whole status thing, and it's all super interesting. You can use it for all these different reasons that we talked about. But like what it does not have is this ability that something like a token or like a normal token that you can sell that's transferable, or shares have, right? They don't have liquidity. You can't just go out and exit the thing that you've invested or you've worked on and profit from it. And so that's why I think optimism with this latest announcement, that's why I think they've done this like two, or this, I don't know if it's two tokens, but way it is, right? They've got this citizenship, which is non-transferable. So in some way it must be a token. So you have these two tokens, I guess, and one of them you can use you can sell it and profit from it, and the other one is just your reputation thing that you can show. So the other side, I guess, like, is also really interesting, right? How would you get that, and what then gives it value, and what functionalities do you give it?
Yeah. Well, maybe it's also a form
Wait.
of entitlement to earn token, right? So I really like the nomenclature that A16Z had, where they called the status one like coin and the other one token.
Yeah.
So maybe we can separate like that, so we don't, just so we know what we're talking about. But
Well,
so maybe the coin.
just maybe define it. So they said the coin was the
Wait, didn't they say points though?
They said
Or
points
did
there.
I mix it up?
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
So they said
There you go.
points for the
So-
reputation that we've talked about, and
Points.
Optimism
Right,
calls
yeah,
it
points.
citizenship, right? So we've got points in the citizenship,
Mhm.
and then they called the other one the coin, and Optimism calls that their token, their OP token, and the token is on both sides this transferable thing, like your regular token that you see. But sorry, yeah, Louis.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, so the points would be non-transferable. Maybe they even expire if you don't keep up. Like whatever, like you could program them however you see fit to keep them valuable as a representation of status and like, I guess, effort, achievement, like trust, reputation, all these things. But maybe they can also give you some sort of entitlement to earn tokens, right? So so in that way, they're not liquid, you can't sell them, but they're definitely not worthless either, right? Because they do represent some sort of income share or profit share or something like that.
Or maybe just access, right? In our DAO, this could be access to consulting engagements, or to be published on the platform, things like that. But yeah, maybe even some like share on revenue. The thing that I kind of found, or that was missing in this A16Z article. So basically, the article is talking about this whole topic, and I think they lay it out quite well. That we have this the problem that we've just been discussing. They lay out this problem that you need reputation, but you also want liquidity and the tokens, and then they suggest that you could issue these points to people who do work for a community. They get the points, and you can't transfer them. But since you have them, you are entitled to the token. So you get the token issued to your account, and then you can use that token. That's kind of your reward. What they don't go into is like, where does the demand for the token come from? And that's something I'm really missing in this whole piece. So the alternative could be, you have this point or citizenship in Optimism. You have this non-transferable token, and that then entitles you to revenue from a stablecoin, right? So you don't need a second transferable token, but if your DAO creates revenue or profit, then you get a piece of that profit, but it's paid out in like just stable coins or ETH. I don't know, something.
Yeah.
That could be a
Something
model.
that you didn't have to.
Yeah.
It's not your custom token. It's some other token.
Yeah.
US
one that
dollar
already
token.
exists. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually also an excellent point, right? Because in a lot of ways, I mean, having your token, I guess on Optimism, they said, we're launching a token, but that's just like, our goal is to get from A to B, and we're using a car. So that's like the mode of transportation, like, but the car is not the important part. It's from getting from A to B. So I think they also very much said like, yes, we're launching a token, but don't focus on that. Like, what we're building here is the cool part. So I guess that's, I like that idea to actually question whether or not you need the token, right? Because I always think reducing complexity in any system is always a win in a way.
Yeah. But tokens do have benefits though. I mean, they help you to, I guess, like, I mean, you could raise time, so you could pay people with the status tokens. That would be enough. If they then, because they hold them, would get a share of the revenue or the profit that the DAO makes, that would make them really worth working for, I guess. But the piece and the share of revenue would, to some degree, have to be tied to the issuance of these points. because otherwise, if more and more people get the points, then the revenue will kind of be like split to too many people, right? And then it's not really worth having, and you can't even sell them. So yeah,
well, there
I don't
needs to
really
be a function where like everybody working on the project makes, not the sizes maybe get smaller, but the whole cake's getting bigger. So that, so it has to be a positive sum game in a way. But yeah, of course, because if you just have then 10 consultants working one project, nobody wins. But if you have 10 consultants who each bring in business and everybody has room to work on their own project, then of course it will be great, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
still do think a token has, like a transferable token has benefits.
Of course it does. And I mean, just from the perspective of a DAO treasury, being able to create liquidity around this value you're creating is amazing, right? Because it's like taking your ideas, the creativity, and also all the input of your members, and being able to kind of almost pay in advance on the value you're creating, like IPO style almost, is phenomenal, right? It really helps bootstrap these projects. So, but then of course there's also point for criticism, because then a lot of people are like, well, if you really analyze it and you look at the fully diluted market cap, like, is this DAO really worth $100 million, which all they make is like, I don't know, some insert some sort of activity. But then I guess, I don't really know what point I'm trying to make, but that's a problem that already exists in the traditional finance world too, right? I mean, I just saw this picture this morning. I think Jay shared it in a different group. Market cap of Tesla versus all other car manufacturers in the world, and it's about equal. So like, it's how do you justify that? But then of course it's amazing if you are Tesla, because that means you have capital to realize your vision, right?
A lot.
That would be very different flow. Like imagine every car manufacturer was a different protocol, right? And Tesla would have very little revenue, but their stock would be worth so much, right? So, if you were bought into Tesla and you've got that token, that token's value would be way higher than whatever revenue dividend that Tesla is going to give out,
Yeah.
And there's so much back and forth, right, with people discussing, oh, is that price right? And it doesn't seem right, it's a bubble, whatever. But the point is that price is being transacted on. So in a way, if you wanted to, be on the side of that philosophy where the market is always right, then yeah, so in that case, people would be very happy if they own shares rather than just the revenue, because Tesla probably has nearly zero dividends, I think. And revenue wise, they'd be way lower than the Toyotas and the Volkswagens, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So their share. See, you're just comparing it, right? You're saying like, if you bought the share, then you might be 10x or 20x, and you can sell that. But if you would have, let's say they had a separate share that was non-transferable, that gave you a piece of their profit, then you, probably would have gotten not so much, because they're not making any profit, but the shares kind of price in. And I think that's the majority of the valuations, is like this future, right? Just like this typical growth stock evaluations, this like, well, in 10 years, they'll be self-driving and they'll be supplying all the taxi companies and AI and whatnot, and battery, and that's all the stuff that they will have, and that's why they're so valuable, right? And that's why the share price is so high.
Yeah,
that's the
and because in Web3, I guess, like we briefly discussed this before, right? That maybe, or most projects you would say are leaning towards the growth side of things rather than the value side of things, right? So nobody would be I think, incentivizing people with revenue or dividends. Okay, if it's a very stable 100-year-old company, if you're talking about Coca-Cola, maybe, maybe people would be okay with that. But in a fast-moving, growing industry like what Web3 hopefully will be and continue to be, I think if you wanted to pull talent into the area, they probably would not be so excited about just getting a piece of that dividend revenue going forward.
I agree. Yeah. So you somehow
We
need that token
need,
as well.
need a little bit of both, right? I mean, because of course you can operate with very little or no revenue for a while, but I mean, there's a point where it becomes unsustainable, right? I mean, the mechanisms that enable like these insane growth stock company valuations also has a lot to do with super low interest rates for them to borrow money and blah blah blah. So like there's a lot of pathology that also goes on with that, that I don't think is good ultimately for. Yeah, I mean, unless you're like a very skilled trader and you can like ride these trends up and sell at a profit all the time, then it's great. But if you're like buy and hold, then I don't know. I'm not like, of course, then yeah, the big winners of the .com bubble are still around, right? And they've increased by 50,000% in value. So maybe what I'm saying is wrong, but
no, I think you're not wrong. It's just about timeline. It's just about at a certain point in the future, Apple won't exist, right? At some point, it might be 50 years, might be 50,000 years, I don't know. But at some point, Apple won't exist. Amazon won't exist, right? So I think it's just about time scale, and in which timeline are you looking to boundary your investing decisions. And I think for people that are working in projects in the Web3 space, everybody's looking to compete and to grow and to eat market share, right? So in a way, they're not there for the stable payout of 3% of revenues forever, right? They're going for all the marbles. They want to be in a project that it's going to take over the world, right? And in that situation, they want that ownership. I think they want that ownership, and when the time's right, they want to be able to cash in quickly, right? And if
Want the
you
call option,
can't, exactly, and you can't, nobody buys a call option for dividends, right? Or maybe there are some, I don't know. But
so how would you issue it then? Like, I mean, would you just, if you think about, let's say for us, Tokenomics DAO, we'd launch 2 tokens. We'd say we have 1 token that we issue for reputation and status, and everybody can use that to apply internally for ranks, that kind of stuff, and it maybe give you some other attributes. And then there would be a second token that we pay out as a reward. Let's say you do something for the DAO, you do some contribution. Do you just get 2 tokens? Would there be like a different payout mechanism? And what are the other specific functionalities of the tokens then? I guess like the thing that Optimism does, they on the one side have, I guess the thing, if I understood this correctly, they have both sides can vote, right? They have the citizens and they're non-transferable. So they want some influential people that can vote on issues. And the token holders, so the capital that comes in and buys the tokens, they can also vote. But there's like this, you kind of have that balance, right? Because between people who've been with this for a long time or have kind of earned their position and people who have just bought into their position.
Yeah.
But yeah,
well, it's kind of like the division in government, right? I mean, the House of Representatives and the other one, or in Germany, the Bundestag, Senate. Yeah, thank you. Or in, that seems like a good idea to introduce, to kind of give everybody a voice, which is probably smart. because that way you also keep in mind, because investors or people with capital are also very important to your project, right? Like it's also not fair to say, oh, they just like want to buy a reputation, tell us what to do. It's like, well, maybe their interests are very well suited to your project, why wouldn't they be? Unless you like hate money, or unless you have something that's like locked value and somebody's trying to steal it from you and they're doing it through buying up all your stuff. I don't know, but I think generally speaking, investors' opinions should be heard for sure. And then give you like the system of like checks and balances, right? So that both sides are represented and they can kind of discuss it out and then make a decision. That sounds really cool. So I guess like it's almost like having somebody represent like new members. Like there's a new membership chair in our DAO, and then there's like a contributor chair and like a OG principal chair, something like that. And they just like meet and they argue over stuff, and then at the end they come to some sort of consensus, and then that's how they decide to go. And I guess you could, rather than voting for individual representatives, you can kind of crowdsource these decisions, right? By giving everybody a vote. Through governance function of a token.
Okay.
I guess in our decision, when we discuss these things, right, it's always important to focus on what we're solving for. There's the incentivizing aspect, right, to the whole token payouts and distribution, and then there's also the governance side. And just wanted to say that we need to be clear, like, okay, first, if let's say we're talking about governance, then what do we actually want to govern? What are we governing for, right? Is it just, what are the decisions that are going to be put to the floor, and how do we even decide on that, right? Like I always thought one of the weaknesses of democracy, right, is sometimes for certain things you don't really want the masses to be voting on certain things because maybe they're not the most educated on the topic and not, this is going to sound elitist, right? But if you've got a democracy where everybody votes on everything all the time, then, and 95% of the people don't even know the ins and outs of the issue at hand, then you're just going to dumb down the whole process and you end up everyone becoming more and more lost, right? So who gets to vote one thing, what people should vote on is another thing, right? And it's so complex. So I think we have, I don't even know which one should come first. Do we first discuss what are the things that we want to actually be voting on, and have that as a first step? Everything else follows a certain constitution or a manifesto or whatever, and then we define what might be the gray areas that our simple founding document doesn't cover, right? And then we say these are the things that we need to vote on, and when these votes need to come to pass, that's how we want to vote on it, and these are who can take part.
Well, I think typically it's done. I mean, so yeah, of course, we could define an area of like, we define the channel of discourse, right? And so within that channel, you can then make proposals, for example. And like I think treasury, and I guess you could have a different point, like different points allow you to make proposals on different subjects, maybe in different subject areas. But I don't know if that's, so if I envision like a very large organization with thousands of members where like, or maybe tens of thousands of people holding points with different interests and they're working on also very different things, I could see where that could be very useful, that you can kind of subdivide and like rely on people's expertise in these areas to make a proposal that really addresses a need that's not just like political mumbo jumbo. But like when you're starting out, I think again, like I'm still worried about the complexity, because if you have like 10 people or 100 people holding these points, I would assume that they all should be heard, like or they should at least all be in the know of what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And then I guess if they vote, then it's also up to everybody individually, right? So just because I'm bringing forward a proposal doesn't mean anybody's forced to vote on it.
Yeah. But yeah, it'll be tough to solve this problem. Like, who's actually informed as part of the vote? And you could, I don't know, you could do a thing where somebody has to read or listen to that, right? But then
you get a POAP for listening to it for an hour and a half, and then you get to vote.
Exactly. Like, you use the POAP to vote. If you've listened to the community call where somebody explains the details of the vote and the proposal.
So there's actually much better systems for finding consensus than than just plain old voting, like voting A or B, or even if you have multiple choice. Like, so I have yet to see this being realized on the blockchain, but I think it'll actually solve a lot of problems, because I learned about this technique called systemic, in German is systemisches Konsensieren, systemic consensing, I guess, in English. But it's really cool. So the basic idea is, rather than voting like, yes, I'm for this or for that, or I'm for this and against that, you're voting, there's 5 proposals, and you're giving each proposal points based on resistance to feel to agreeing to it. So say if I give a 5 is the highest score, so that means maximum resistance, means I'm not for this one at all. And 0 would mean my favorite proposal, let's do that one. The cool thing is that it creates a data-rich environment, because now we have basis for discussion, right? So now I see who voted which way, and then I can go and say, hey, Jay, why do you not want us to buy 3 Lamborghinis? I see you put 5 there, but now we can have a discussion about it, because I won't get to buy 3 Lamborghinis unless I get you to lower your number.
Oh, I thought I was going to say because I wanted to buy 6.
Yeah, exactly. So, this
good point.
But so this would come out, right? Because usually if you vote against 3 Lamborghinis, I would just say, well, he's just against it. I have no idea why.
He likes Ferraris.
But if you're like, it's kind of cool because
Ferraris all day.
It gives you more data to work with, and I think it increases the quality of discussion. Because then when I go to say, Jay, what's wrong? Like, and you're like, oh, I want Ferraris, and also I want 6 of them. Like, oh, okay, so it's not an issue of like spending too much money. We cleared that up.
Yeah.
So
that's true. Well, okay, I think that maybe Snapshot has something like that. That feature I haven't actually checked, but that'd be interesting, governance wise.
And then
to look into.
I don't know the Swiss model so super well, but just from casually following a few of the different petitions and votes, like they've got more direct. I mean, I might be wrong. Okay, I'm just sharing the little I know. So caveat, but I think for them, the governments it has a nice balance with being very conservative while allowing for risk taking, right? So in a sense, from what I understand, the government's there to just enforce what's already always been agreed upon and how it's always been done. No changes, right? Their role is not really to take adventurous steps, but just to administrate the government in the way that it's always been done. But then when something comes up where, let's say there's a war somewhere and they want to take in refugees, right? Like that's something like let's say new and contemporary. So then what would happen is they would go around and get people to sign a petition to say, hey, this is something that enough of the population thinks it's important for us to consider doing. So once they've hit a certain threshold to say, okay, there's 100,000 people that want the Swiss government to take in refugees. There's 100,000 people that want the Swiss government to back the currency with gold again, or whatever, right? Then the government goes ahead to then discuss, right? Their version of parliament goes and discusses the topic for I don't know, a few weeks or months. Everyone gets educated on the topic, the pros and cons get talked about, and then there's a vote. And I think even for the vote, when you're voting to change something, it's not like a 50-50 thing. You actually have to have something like 70% or something to say, hey, we need to change this so that we can now move in this new direction, right? So that's, I like it because it allows for informed consent or disagreement. It also allows for this nice balance of conservatism with liberalism, right? You can take it. You can take risks. You can do something new, but it's not willy-nilly. It's actually, it needs to be informed and discussed first. So I don't know whether that could be we could do that with with the governance of the DAO, right? Like in a way to say, hey, things only need to get voted upon when XYZ conditions are met, and how many number of token holders or point people with a number of points, right, agree that this thing needs to be voted on. Then a vote gets called, and maybe then a few discussion calls can happen. And like you say that with the PO app, like you need to take part in these calls before you can put in a vote,
Yeah. I think that's an interesting thought. But and you didn't mention it now, but I do think that like both points and coins should be eligible to vote.
Yeah, sure. I think so too. I think the only issue is the fear that people that can buy tokens might overwhelm the voting process, which you can then put, you can put stops in place to prevent that, right?
Yeah. So that there's
But at the same
always like
time,
a balance.
Yeah, there's a balance. But at the same time, who decides what that balance should be? Because maybe citizens shouldn't get that much votes, right? If we define how a citizen, we all have romantic ideas, right? The word citizen is also such an emotive word, right? But let's say class A and class B of people, right? We decide the balance between these two. One's not based on financial resources. One's based on the citizenship. One is based on things that are non-financial, right? But the question is, okay, so how much should they get to impact the voting? Maybe if it's too much, it's also not good.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah, and I think that the cool, we're trying to solve for like governing, right? Like people have been trying to solve this since the beginning, So we also have to be aware of what we're actually saying we want to do, and not overcomplicate things or not bite off too much that we can't digest it, right? Because also we're trying to build something here, and if we spend too much time worrying about how we get governed, we lose that speed and agility too, right? And resources. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we don't need governance, but I'm saying be cognizant that, we don't want to become a crazy bureaucracy as well, right?
Yeah. For the amount of time that we talked about it here in this podcast now, I don't think it reflects the importance. I mean, it is important, but like for the time being, I think we can kind of park this a little bit, the whole governance thing, right?
I think for where Tokenomics DAO stands, it's important to have the discussion more so than it is to immediately execute on all the ideas, right?
Yeah.
But having talking about it is I think is very valuable in kind of getting a pulse and seeing what's out there, right? Like analyzing these papers and articles that have been written. And I think this like 2-token thing, like all of a sudden I see it everywhere, right? Like a few months ago there really wasn't much buzz about it, and now everybody wants it. So I think it's definitely very interesting. Maybe there'll be 3 tokens soon, who knows?
God, yeah. So one thing that I'm still not clear about is like, do these 2 tokens have to be linked, or are they completely separate?
What would be examples of linking them?
I mean, in the A16Z article, they argue that everybody who has points gets coins paid out, so that they're linked, right? So you have to have the one token to get the other, and some of the mechanism is linked. But you could also do the mechanism completely unlinked, I'd say. You'd write an article and you get 10 status points and you get 10 token points. And the token points, you can spend them, you can sell them on a secondary market and people might want to buy them. And the other token you can't, and you just hold it, but they don't have any linkage, right? And I don't know what the benefits really are. Like I said, the one weakness in the A16Z article for me was they talked about that the people who have points, they would get paid out the coins, but like I didn't see any description of what gave the coins any value in this whole model. So that's something I think they missed in the article.
You mean other than the description of status, but like they didn't go into the governance function of points, for example?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
thought that was a really good point made by you and community member Yang in the demand side of tokenomics article, that I think it was in that article where that like governance is access to resource allocation, for example, and that is very valuable in itself, right? So a lot of times like, well, it's kind of been like the idea has been like commoditized in the sense that like, oh yeah, every token is a utility token because it's a governance token, yada yada yada. But being allowed to actively steer the resource allocation, both financially and like where you spend focus and effort in the community, is intrinsically valuable, right?
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
maybe the points, maybe that is kind of like the more tangible value is the governance.
Yeah. So that gives like both of them some kind of value, right? And then we can think of other mechanisms. I don't know what. Maybe you can still I don't know, somehow if you hold them, that gives you access to the community, a certain number of these valuable tokens because you can sell them. Maybe that gives it some more like Friends with Benefits do it, or Bankless DAO, or I think many others as well. Kind of establishing this gated community
multi-layered,
model.
right? Like, so if I have the consulting POAP, whatever that might be, or the NFT, I can engage in consulting projects and have an avenue to generate revenue for myself that way through the DAO. Then being involved in governance decisions is valuable. Possibly getting a revenue share from the DAO might be one function. Simply being able to have access to the Substack, Medium, come on a podcast, whatever, like the publishing arm, so to say, of the DAO, that's very valuable because you get an audience. And I think you could layer, many different ones of these on there. And I think it would make the demand for points very, very real.
I think that's the important point, that it makes it real. It makes it tangible, right, Lovis? Yeah. It's a means of connecting the two and making it relatively tangible to each other, I think.
But then where does the demand for the token come from, right?
So I guess the demand for the token comes from the token itself having value first. If it's traded somewhere and it has a dollar value attached to it somehow, a fiat value attached to it somehow, then in people's minds, it just straight away turns into a resource, right? And more resource is always better.
Well, like there needs to be a buyer. And where does that buyer come from, right? So if let's say we create 1 million tokens and we issue them to everybody who writes a piece of content. Mm-hmm. And then these people who earn these tokens, let's say I have 10 of these and want to sell them, who's going to buy them, right? We have to give someone a reason to buy them for. Like, why would you buy Tesla shares? Because you think you can sell them to somebody else for more in the future because they're going to value the company more. And that's maybe based on, I don't know, maybe they're going to grow into their current evaluations and they're going to churn out billions and billions and trillions of revenue in the near future. And then all of a sudden, yeah, you can sell your shares for more. That's something that would be valuable, right? So I don't know. There has to be this, at least some mechanism that connects it to that.
Well, wouldn't the tokens be in a way like equity to what the equity towards that protocol?
Well, they're not really
project.
I think the difference between equity and normal tokens or utility tokens is that with equity, I mean, if something happens to the company, at least you could, in theory, turn in your piece of share for a piece of the company, right? So if Tesla goes bankrupt, then you, with your share in that whole bankruptcy process, they would sell off all the assets and things like that, and you as a shareholder would be entitled to some of that. I know it never reaches the shareholders because before that comes all the debtors and things like that. So it never comes to you actually, but that's the theory. And I'm not sure if that's the same for tokens. Right? Because there are no
but we could
assets.
make it that way, right? Or you could make, we don't have physical assets, but you could,
intellectual property, maybe,
they
content, brand.
and they could own the revenue that, let's say I'm not saying we're going to do ads, but let's say that there are ads on a website. Let's say Twitter starts paying out people, contributors, money for posts and impressions and whatever. Like, token holders might get a call on those things, right? So that would put demand on it. And then once things start to grow, say each token gets paid $1 a month at the moment in revenue share, and in 12 months time they get paid $10 a month for each token, it tells people, hey, the trajectory of this guy's looking good, they're going to grow. And then that pushes people into that Tesla, Apple, Netflix mode, right? Of, oh, they're growing, I want some.
Yeah.
It could also be a component, especially for people that are getting started in our ecosystem, where we do ask them to buy a token and stake, or maybe I hate to use staking because it's so misused, but lock them for
hold them,
some sort of
hold them,
initial, or just hold them, right? Just some sort of like, hey, I'm interested, I'm serious about it. I put whatever number of dollars into your token, and that might be a prerequisite for one level of access, and then so like, okay, well, to get this first POAP, or not first, but like this specific POAP, you do have to hold 1,000 tokens and you have to write a Twitter thread, whatever. These are the two requirements, and then you do get a point for that. After that, you can sell the token, but chances are you won't. I mean, I don't know, maybe people will, but I think there's a good chance that they also won't. So that might be kind of like a connection of it.
True. Yeah.
And then Flo, you had brought up this idea before, where kind of the community members also help to kind of bootstrap individual project ideas, and putting some capital on the line, and then with that, very tailored to the project they're working on, might be entitled to future benefits that project produces. I guess, but so like this idea from like the micro, like putting it back on like the DAO level. But I guess that is then most equal to equity in the whole organization.
Yeah. I think they're pretty good things to start with, I think.
Yeah. Well, so it could be both an entry level function, right? But there could also be a tally of like total tokens earned during your work with the DAO. So like there's a freelancer platform, I think Upwork does it, I think freelancer.com does it, or maybe Fiverr does it even too, where they show kind of how much work the people have done on these platforms, also by a function of how many dollars they've earned over time, to give you just like as a it's like a what do you call it? It's like a normalized, just like 5-star like indicator, and it's either a lot or a little, and like that can give you also some sort of indication.
Some
So
reputation.
you could do that with like how many tokens have they held or traded over time. I don't know. I don't know if that's a useful function or not.
True. Yeah.
And then, so as people move up the ranks, you could also kind of like similar to the, law firm or consulting firm model, when people become principals, they might have to, again, also put their own capital on the line. They might have earned it working for the DAO, right? But they might also be outpacing that, and they want to maybe become a principal before they have 100,000 tokens or whatever.
Yeah.
And so then they would have to buy them from the market.
Yeah.
But that might be a completely fair function, right? Very useful function.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's still a lot of cool ideas to explore. But yeah, like you said, this 2-token model, it seems to be popping up a lot. I think 2-token model is actually a stupid name because it doesn't say a lot. For me, it's more this reputation token and liquidity token. I don't have a better name, but better describing would certainly be you have one reputation token and one liquidity token that you can use to sell.
Yeah, that
That's
would
what
be the
optimism does,
description of the token. That would be the description of the 2 different tokens, but the reasons behind why people would want these tokens, I think, would be incentives versus status, right?
But status also incentivizes.
Yeah. But one's a lot more. Yeah, okay. The direct, I would say the liquidity one is a lot more direct. Put food on the table kind of incentives. So
is one maybe financial and one is not financial?
Yeah. One is influence, one is financial, right? Or not even I don't even know if it's purely influence. It's a wider thing than just influence. It's access, it's network, it's it also, and a lot of times gets you some financial benefits too, right?
Yeah, it might score you a better job, better project. Some good connections.
Points and coins.
When I say incentives, maybe I like when Flo mentions building gravity, right? Like I think the basic token, if you're paying people well and the value of the token's going up, then that builds gravity in the sense that it generates interest in the project and it brings people to the project, and they want to bring their energy in, right? Their attention first, then their energy. And then when they do well in that arena, then they start to build status, right? And reputation.
True, yeah.
And that's why I think maybe when you asked earlier the weakness, or when you said the weakness of that article was how do you get demand, right, for that token? I would say I don't even know if it's so important to get that status side of things, that status token done properly until the primary token is done first. Like if that project's working well enough, then you start worrying about how people in that ecosystem is gonna get organized via status. Because if not, you're like giving out status to in an ecosystem that's not calling for status, right? Like nothing's really being done properly yet. So why do we need status at that point in time?
Yeah, but Jay, to scale the organization, you do kind of need to organize, right? The people a little bit. I actually would have gone the other way. I would have said we probably need the status reputation token first, because that's effectively what we're doing, right? We're running cohorts and trying to qualify people to help us with content production and consulting projects. But first, before we can give them that level of access, we kind of need to know that they're interested, that they know how to write, that they understand tokenomics, like all these things, right?
It's kind of more sophisticated. Yeah.
But then nobody so far has asked to get paid, right? Everybody so far is just super eager to be there and could love to contribute. But if you can give them something, even as little as a Discord role, they're like, whoa, this is so cool, right? Like level up.
Yeah. The status token is like more... Sorry, you go.
No, I just want to say about that POAP badge.
Oh yeah. I mean, the status tokens or POAPs would be just better version of Discord roles, nothing else.
Right.
More sophisticated,
like more,
on-chain, trackable. You can use them elsewhere. All that kind of stuff is what they would bring. I think.
Yeah, but that's so cool, right? That is incredibly useful to our organization, right? Beyond the three of us or the 10 of us, or however, like the fact that it motivates people to show up and do stuff.
Yeah.
Is phenomenal, right? And not just as a function to like, oh, well, because we want free labor, like it has nothing to do with that. It's like we're coming together based on interest. Like it, the content we've produced naturally filters people based on their interest, and there's a chance to engage and like to kind of, step up your game in that context, in that arena. Is super.
So let me I would say then, I think what I was trying to say was there's no need to link between the two. Like you don't need to give out the tokens yet at this stage, give out status and start organizing people based on their ability to work and their ability to deliver and their enthusiasm and everything, right? Like hierarchy of competence, but maybe I don't know if we would be biting off too much if we want to now then straight away say, okay, once you get this POAP, you're entitled to that number of tokens and etc., right? Because then it's really you open a can of worms to, I need to try and describe to people, hey, but these tokens do have value because we think they will have value because Tesla.
They line it up as a pre-launch function almost of the token, right? So if you have status, then you're now not entitled to get any of the tokens. Maybe there's an airdrop or something, but it's a very small amount. But you're now allowed or entitled to purchase the tokens, right? So maybe you can purchase at a small discount or something like that because you have proven that you've already added a lot of value to the organization. So we want to reward you for that. So on launch day, it launches for $1, you get to buy it for 85 cents, something like that.
Yeah, but we need some way to track that contribution that's happened so far.
Yeah,
I think that's something we're still missing.
Yeah, so dummy token until then, and tipping function in Discord, and get to the minting of the POAPs as soon as possible.
True. Yeah, very true. So have we missed anything? Anything we haven't discussed yet about this reputation token system landscape?
I'm sure. And that's like the fun of it, right?
Yeah. Tell us what it is. If we have. I hope I can use this now to finish an article on it.
One thing I would like to bring up though is that even though I expect that we agree that it's an iterative process, and as time goes on, we'll keep adjusting to get better and better, right, at incentivizing and keeping people motivated and being fair. The downside though is that the more we iterate, the less we seem consistent, right? So people can make people want to make long-term decisions based on stable systems, right? And if we iterate too much and too often, then the system becomes, it starts to get viewed as an unstable system, right? And then people might not stay for the long haul. So it's just another thing that we need to keep in mind and keep in check.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at a certain point, only governance decisions can make these changes, right? So then the people active in supporting the protocol or the DAO would also be the ones making the decision, and thereby would probably then not think of it as unstable because it was their decision. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, I think it would be also about balance. Like if the governance people, the people in charge of the governance make too many, if they're the only stakeholders in the thing, then okay. But if there's also a large group of users, let's say, right? And they feel like, what? I haven't followed for 6 weeks and now I'm back and everything's different again. It might give them pause, you know?
Yeah.
Sure.
True. But yeah, I guess like bigger changes, we would take some time for that. Ideally.
So like in protocols, these kinds of decisions or this like approaching instability have led to like hard forks, right? Where then two sides like had different opinions and they could not reconcile. So they were just like, well, then there'll just be two from now on. And you guys go do your thing and we'll do ours.
Exactly, yeah.
And then
Let's
one's
start a new
Secessions.
Tokenomics DAO.
Yeah.
Has this happened on a DAO level too, Flo? Did you know of?
I haven't really heard of any, no.
I guess because it wouldn't be such a like forking event, right? People can just go and start their own. It's like not really.
Yeah,
tracked.
that's the thing. Yeah. I guess, yeah. Here it's like more the people that are the key resources, maybe the brand, the reputation of the whole thing. Yeah. I don't know.
But if people are really unhappy, they just sell their tokens, go start something new and tell everyone on Discord, hey, I started this new project.
Exactly.
Come over. Right.
Yeah. There's no
I guess
source code
that's
you need to
one of
fork, really. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the beauties and one of the beauties of the system is that everyone can migrate wherever they get treated best and they believe is the best return on investment, return on time.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so that is that is like the base layer governance function, right? You vote with your feet, you just leave.
Yeah.
Digitally,
Exactly.
like you just join a different server. Like,
yeah.
Out of here.
Yeah. It's much easier than the physical voting with your feet.
Yeah.
You can still do it.
One is much easier than giving 30-day notice or something like that. Just please.
Yes. Yeah. Just sell your tokens and leave. Do something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's cool. I mean, that could then like drive really cool other projects.
Yeah. I mean, that is
The
the
hu-
fundamental necessity of real innovation, right? That's also like, okay, this is like macroeconomics again, but like that's actually also why I'm so pissed that we've been in this really low interest rate environment where massive corporations can borrow for almost zero and just keep their little gravy train going, because it actually kills innovation, right? Everybody's like, oh, but Amazon, Google, blah blah, they also innovated. I'm like, no, they're not. They build a machine that makes them money, and they've been using billions to keep that machine running. They have not built a billion machines. I mean, well, okay, of course they have been incredibly innovative at some point, but radical innovation is something that's like the 0 to 1 stuff, what I'm talking about, right? So like make something out of nothing. And we've had very little of that actually in the last 10, 20 years. And I do think it's a lot because of that. So I like this kind of, it's a lot more, maybe it's a lot more harsh or cutthroat, I guess, but I don't know, like constraints is what creates creativity in humans, I think. So also this problem being faced with like, well, I have no resources to build this. How do I get resources to build this? Like, that's always an awesome problem to solve, right?
Yeah.
And if you can make it, then that validates your idea. And if you live in an environment with like unlimited resources, why even try?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
take the risk.
No, but the issue, even worse, right? Is unlimited resources being given to a very centralized few, and that's the
Yeah.
issue. Because right now, when you think about it, everyone's not trying to sustainably solve the world's problems. They're trying to make enough of an impact to show that they've got a very crazy trajectory going on, and then they hope for this very profitable exit, right? And the reason why they're thinking like that is because they know there's no point in trying to make it too big, because they can't compete with the other guys that have access to unlimited capital. And so the best way to play the game is to just get bought out by these guys, by these big guys. Oh, let's do WhatsApp so that Google can buy us, Facebook can buy us, whatever, right? And I think that's where the corruptive process begins. That capital is scarce except for the very few, and then the very few then take this capital to just buy up whatever might be competing with them, and therefore you end up with innovation getting stymied, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
back in the day, there was this thing about who killed the electric car, and they were saying, oh, actually, maybe we could have gotten an electric car way earlier, and the whole grid would have been different. The whole oil and gas infrastructure, what would oil and gas be used for besides pushing combustion engines, right? Would all be different. But at the moment, the guys that had capital, or at that moment, the guys with capital was, the big oil companies, and they said, hey, we'll just buy your patent, we'll just keep you underground. And maybe the guy who designed that electric car got pretty rich, but it didn't change the world, right?
Yeah, there's a lot. That's a really good example. And there's a lot going into that, right? The supply chain for combustion engine cars is much more complicated than for electric cars, for example. So there's whole countries' economies, namely the one that I live in, depend on that train to keep going, right? Because if you don't have motor engine blocks, then you don't need the same kind of machinery to make them, or like, to forge aluminum, or all these things. So it's a whole thing.
And even the whole energy, like if you not every country has oil and gas to drill, right? But every country can put on a nuclear reactor to generate electricity, and therefore that's another layer of decentralization, right? The people that have control of that energy from centralized locations would be very, very unhappy with giving that monopoly status up and saying, oh yeah, okay, every country can now have access to electricity and get industrialized, right? It's why would they want to give up that power?
Same for solar, right? Or wind or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's a big force also holding back, I think, renewable development is fear of decentralization from like the legacy systems. But yeah, of course, these things also have a supply chain that needs to be figured out and all that. There's no free lunch ever. But yeah, that's for me anyway. I think it's a good segue into closing this discussion, because I think once again land at the place where Web3 is so awesome because it helps us create the change that we want to see in the world, even though it's super cheesy. But working together in this format as a DAO, like I think all three of us believe it's the future of work, right? Having this like ability to vote however, with your feet, with your tokens, with your coins, with your points, sure is a lot better than the current system. And yeah, I'm excited to build it with you guys.
True. Yeah. Let's hope we can we can get something going on this model. Cool.
Yeah. And whoever's listening, any good ideas, please let us know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or maybe you want to come on and talk to someone, talk to Flo on what you think might be the best way going forward. Would love
Please,
to have
yeah.
anyone on. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Then
Cool.
shall we close it?
Yeah.
Call
Does
it a
someone
day,
just
call
do
it a
this,
night.
like, do this plug?
Oh, Lovis, do the plug.
What was that? I'm waiting for it.
I know. I
Come
was
on,
like,
man,
somebody else
plug
gonna
us.
do it.
No, man.
Join our
Come on,
Discord.
Lovis.
Most likely you already subscribed on Substack. I think we're like crossing 500 subscribers on Substack. We have like over like
Hey.
almost 800 people on Discord. This thing has
Yeah.
definitely been blowing up, and we're super excited to be here and build it with you guys. Find us on Twitter, at Tokenomics DAO. There you will find the Discord invite link in the bio. I think that's maybe the easiest way to find it. And get involved. Yeah, we're running rolling cohorts now. It's still really straightforward to become a contributor. All we want to see is a little bit of proof of work that you're interested, that you want to commit, that you're excited about this. And then we work together on all kinds of interesting things, including discussing how to build our token system, like you heard today.
Yeah. Awesome.